My name is Jenny, and I'm a wife and mom raising 2 kids. But I used to live a more glamorous life as a TV reporter. I was on the nightly news interviewing pop stars and politicians. So when I said goodbye to TV and hello to motherhood, I suddenly discovered what we moms are up against. We live in a world that tells us to be rich and famous, thin and successful. You know, almost nobody says, "Oh, hey, you're a mom? That is fabulous." But you are fabulous, and I'm here to tell you why.
It's the ChannelMom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
Brought to you by the Healthy Marriage Project. Just click on one of their ads to find out about a healthy relationship workshop near you. Alrighty, if you're a parent, there are probably a few topics you dread talking to your children about, like what we've just been saying, sex, drugs, and the internet, or dating. Well, you don't have to do this all by yourself. There is a woman who has a passion for helping you talk to your kids about the tough stuff, the hot button issues, as she calls them. She's literally a youth culture expert. She hosts Choose Now Radio, Parent Talk, and Teen Talk, and she's the founder of Choose Now Ministries, dedicated to guiding teens through the very tough issues and helping parents encourage good decision-making, because you can't, in the end, make the decision for your child. One day they're going to walk out and they have to learn how to do it themselves. Plus, she's a mother of 6. Wow.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome, Nicole O'Dell, to the Channel Mom Show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, how early did you have to wake up? Where are you?
Oh, I'm in the Midwest, so it's 9:30, but I'm sick, so just bear with me.
I hear that. Oh, you poor thing. I hope you have a glass of water nearby if you start to cough.
I do, yeah.
So I'm going to give you an easy question or two coming right off. We won't get right into the R-rated stuff. You're a mother of 6. And yes. I applaud you for that, by the way. What do you have? How does it divide?
They go, my oldest is 20. He's off in the Air Force. And then I have 2 teenage daughters and then 4-year-old triplets.
Oh, girl. Are you all right? No wonder you're sick. Who's going to take care of you? Who's taking care of you?
Nobody.
I've been, have you ever thought that? I thought, I do sickness standing up. Everybody else gets to do it lying down. Because when I'm sick, I still have to wash the dishes. And, don't you find that?
Oh, yeah. There's a marching band competition today, and there's a banquet tonight. And
yeah, and you're going to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, God bless you for that. All righty. How did this, let's just be real. I think a lot of people, Shelley thinks it's better than it used to be. She thinks back in the 50s and 60s, maybe parents had a harder time talking to their kids, or maybe 70s. Parents had a hard time talking to their kids about these things. But I still find when I'm, at the bus stop or whatever, although I don't take my child on the bus anymore, but partly because of the hot button issues. But I still find that people don't want to talk about it, or they're on a completely different page than I am with it. We don't let my son date. He's 14, and we don't let him date or have a girlfriend. Now, mind you, he can, I suppose, say that someone's his girlfriend at school to all his friends to remain cool, but we don't let him do that. We don't even let him, when there's a middle school dance, we don't even let him slow dance. We say, you can fast dance, but you can't slow down. And so people look at me like I'm the crazy person, that we're not going to let our kid date till he's 16. And so we are very strict. But part of it is because we went through it ourselves. And when we look back, we think we weren't ready to handle that stuff. And he's a popular kid. Everything's fine. We're not ruining his life. But do you think a lot of parents avoid these things? And what made you decide to come out in the public arena and say, let's talk about this stuff with our kids?
I think many parents do avoid it. I don't know if it's as much avoidance or just not being aware of how young these issues come up and not realizing how much their teenagers need that kind of guidance and preteens. The reason that I tackled this this subject or this lifestyle is that when I was a teenager myself, before that I had been very committed to my faith, very committed to purity and making good choices. And I contracted encephalitis, and it's a pretty bad infection in the lining of the brain. It affected a lot of things in my body. Over one summer before middle school, I gained about 60 pounds from that. It messed up my hypothalamus, my thyroid. So I started middle school. I looked like a completely different child than I had looked before. And I dealt with a lot of bullying and being picked on, and I didn't have friends, and nobody, it was just awful. So my parents weren't thinking about preparing her for choices. They were just trying to get me through the day.
Yeah.
So then over the summer before high school, puberty kicked in, and all of that stuff started working again. And I started high school back to average. And the same kids who were picking on me, they didn't even recognize me. And all of a sudden, I was their best friend. They wanted to go out with me. And so I was slammed into all these choices and wasn't prepared for it.
And how'd you do?
Well, I realized in the first moment that the one main boy who'd picked on me so much, he came up and said some, things like he wanted to date me, so hitting on me.
Yeah.
And he didn't recognize me. And then when he did, the look on his face, and I realized that it was all about appearance, and that if I could get the attention and affection of certain kids in the school, my life would be a lot easier. And that's just exactly what I did. I just walked away from everything, and I ran far in the other direction and started hanging out with the wrong kids. I started drinking. I started dating and sneaking out of my house, and it was just a landslide. And my parents we just weren't prepared.
Yeah, yeah. So you made mistakes, is what you're here to admit.
Oh yeah. Oh, time after time, and realizing one time after the other, every mistake I made, how it in the world's view, how it benefited my popularity, and how it's true that does happen. And when our kids start to place that as important, and they don't realize what's going on, then and when they don't realize that it's not real, then it's one thing after another, and it just builds. My very first bad decision, I left the house. I snuck out in the dark and got in the car with kids I wasn't supposed to be with. This was the first thing I did wrong, and we went to see a concert, and it was Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith.
Oh.
That shows you how it's you put your toe in, and then it goes deeper and deeper. And parents will say, "Well, I talk to my kids about tough things," and then I'll ask them something like, "Well, have you explained to your kids what homosexuality is?"
Yeah.
And they say, "Well, no, I'm not going there."
Yeah.
Well, someone is.
Yeah. Somebody will. I haven't told my daughter about how do I put this, because sometimes she listens, about what it means to end the life of a baby that's inside of you.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to devastate her, and so I've avoided telling her about it. But Shelley, my co-host here, said that you got to tell her because you don't want somebody else to talk to her about it first and get their interpretation of it. By the way, we'll only have about 3.5 minutes left in this segment, but we're going to catch you back in the next segment. You can stay with us, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about one thing before we end this segment, and just be aware that you've got about 3 minutes to talk about it. People avoid it. You're very real about it, and you admit that you bring your faith to bear. You use godly principles when you're approaching these issues, and some people may say, well, poo-poo, that's not for me. I just do what I think is right, and I just let my kids do what I did, and I'm not going to judge them for it, so on and so forth. But you are a youth culture expert, and you see the damage that is done to kids if they don't follow certain principles. So when should parents start talking to their kids about this, and how should they do it?
Well, right away. I had Josh McDowell on my show, and I asked him how early he talked to his kids about sex. And he said, intentionally, when they're 2.
Yeah.
And I said, okay,
Yeah.
take me to school. What do you mean? And he said, well, from the time they're 2, I want them to see that I have a different relationship with their mom than I do with anyone else on this planet. I want them to grow up knowing that that level of intimacy is the goal.
Yeah.
Instead of hiding it. And I want them to realize that it's special and it's good and it's great. And he said, by the time my kids are 8 and 9, they know what's up with mom and dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's great.
But you might as well start them healthfully as toddlers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those things, things like a lot of it at the early ages has to do with modeling. What are we modeling to our kids? And by that I mean not only what we're doing in our own lifestyle, but what are we supporting by watching on television, and what are we laughing at the movie theater, and where are we putting our money, and what kinds of jokes do we find are funny. All those things that speak toward alcohol and racism and premarital sex and all those things. When we laugh at those jokes and we watch those television shows, that's what we're telling our kids. We're saying we support this.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. A minute left. Josh McDowell is not telling his kids about the actual birds and the bees at age 2, but what you're saying is that he is starting to introduce certain issues about sexuality to them so they can get a healthy perspective. Yeah, right?
Right. And the goal here is we're not just talking about the mechanics of how it works. We're talking about growing up with the mindset of chasing hard after what God wants for our teenagers and letting them in on the secrets on why. And what is temptation? What is desire? Why is this going to be difficult? Letting them understand that we've been there. We know it's not some big secret, and we get it. We get that it's hard, but we're still asking it from you.
Yeah. I feel like we've come to a place in our society where I am the weirdo when I say, well, I just want to teach my kids that marriage is a good thing and that they can save themselves from marriage. And people look at me like, are you crazy? Nobody does that anymore. And so I want to talk about how we could possibly do that with our kids in a world that's saying, now, it's impossible now to keep yourself pure, to think marriage is going to last for a lifetime, stuff like that. Can we talk about that coming up?
You bet.
Okay. Thanks so much, Nicole. So we'll be back. We'll also touch on the issue of drugs. How do you just bring that up? Because I think some people think if I bring drugs up, then I'm introducing them to drugs. And so I'm just going to avoid the topic until I smell pot on them or something, you know? So we'll talk about that coming up, too. We'll be back with those hot button issues. Nicole O'Dell loves talking to her. So call if you have any questions, 303-297-1510.